Hello, everyone. I'm Daz, and welcome to American Civil War and UK History. This presentation is available as a video on our YouTube channel or as a podcast from wherever you get your podcast from. And if you're watching on YouTube, remember to hit that subscribe button and give us a big thumbs up. And to keep up to date with everything American Civil War and UK history, check out our website where you'll find blog posts, podcasts, and links to all of our social media pages. The link is available in the podcast description. And joining me today is author Trevor Tipton. Welcome, Trevor.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
And today's discussion is about his new book, The Canteen, which is a fictional novel set during the American Civil War. But before we get into the book, Trevor, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and when you first became interested in history itself?
Well, absolutely. I'll be glad to. I'm retired school teacher. I taught for 45 years, and a lot of those years I spent studying and teaching history. And of course, in the United States here, where I live in Indiana, we have a wealth of history in terms of the Native Americans. And of course, the Civil War is something that's always been a high interest of mine in terms of teaching and studying. And so at some point in time, I realized that there was a lot of information out there that was just sort of being buried and not really talked about much anymore. And I wanted to keep that alive. And so as a storyteller, I guess, I told many stories over the years to my students. And I just thought the one thing that I really like to do is to read books. And I wanted to put some of these stories down into books. And so the reason I chose the Civil War in this particular subject was that in my family, we have a Civil War musket that's been passed down. And so that rifle, if it could only talk, I just wish I knew that, the battles that it had been in, the situations maybe that occurred with that rifle. And but now I'm the owner of it, and I thought I'm going to create some stories, and that's where the historical fiction part comes in. I wove the rifle that I have and the canteen that the story is about into this story, and I thought it really was attractive then to the students that I was teaching, the kids who are usually in the 12 to 18 age group. I just have had success with it so far, and the kids seem to enjoy it, and hopefully others will enjoy it as well.
Okay, so thanks for telling that. I know you alluded a little bit there about that, but so what was the inspiration for you to write this book? And again, why did you choose the American Civil War in particular?
The inspiration was the gun. I have it hanging above my fireplace. And as I said, it's been passed down in the family for many years, many generations. And I guess the inspiration was I wish that I knew more about it. I wish I had been gifted the opportunity to know who used it and know what battles it may have fought in. But since I didn't have that, I thought I can make a good story. And that's where like I said, I'm a storyteller at heart, and I took the liberty to create some stories based upon some studies that I had done of the Civil War and people that I did know about in our area that were in the Civil War. And so I've always liked that time period, just how divided we were, but also at the same time how we conquered some of the division to become unified and to become one of the greatest countries in the world.
And again, you mentioned that the story of that gun there again. So sorry, how did it come into your family? Sorry.
The original owner was a distant relative, down the path many generations ago. And it had been passed down in the family all these years. And I don't know anything about his service. I don't know anything about, the battles that he may have fought in, other than it was passed down and was to be kept in the family. And so as it turned up, I became the next heir apparent to it. And I just thought it would be a neat way to preserve the history of it and to maybe give others an idea of what the Civil War was like. And more than that, some of the the ordeals and some of the situations that the young 18-year-old Travis Tipton encounters while he's in the Civil War.
Okay, and and you did mention a canteen there as well. That so is that part was that part of that same little collection of artifacts?
No, it was not. I chose to go a different route with the story. I wanted to use the canteen, just simply because the way the story evolves, the canteen is what saves his life. He used the rifle, in the Civil War, but I wanted to weave this canteen into how his life was saved, and then was able to go on and continue his life story.
Hmm. And this is this book is actually aimed at younger people, isn't it? So what was the idea behind aiming it at the younger generation? Is that to try and get them hooked into history or the
Absolutely.
Civil War?
Yes, it was. I've always, like I said, read to my students over the years, and the target group that I aimed it for were boys, because a lot of times when boys reach middle school, they lose interest in reading. And so I wanted to create stories that would be enticing for them to become interested, not just in reading, but also become interested in the subject material. And history is something that a lot of times boys gravitate to. Not exclusively, but they're ones that, a lot of times often take off and run with the history theme. And the Civil War, of course, is certainly one of those things in our history books that kids are interested in. And I just didn't want that to die off.
Yeah, excellent. That's brilliant. Okay, so tell us a little bit more about the book and the character involved. Is it inspired by a real person? What's the journey they're going to go on?
Well, Travis Tipton is the main character, and he grew up in northern Indiana, which is where I live, and he decided to sign up for the Civil War at the age of 18, which many teenagers did back then. They signed up, and against his parents' wishes, off he went to war. And the first several chapters talk about his early involvement and some of the life lessons that his parents taught him that would certainly he needed to tap into when he was in the war. And it jumps then into some of the battles that he fought, and of course the main battle, of course, was a surprise attack that he and his division had upon them, and he was a lone survivor. And his survival skills were tested because he was truly out in the middle of the wilderness all on his own. And so the rest of the book talks quite a bit about the things that he had to endure, and things that he went through. And ultimately, he ends up in a prison camp and talks about that. So that's the nature of it. And of course, I had to have a good ending to it. And so he was able to endure all these things and come out alive at the end.
And again, is it based on a real person from that period? Where was the resources? What sort of resources did you use to try and
Okay.
an aspect of that
Yeah.
experience for that young soldier?
Yeah, that's a good question. I did acquire numerous ribbons, Civil War ribbons that were given out to survivors of Civil War times, and they would have reunions ever so often after the war was over, and they would get together. And I received the entire collection of one of the gentlemen that fought in the Indiana 12th Division, and I have all the ribbons and the division. I started to research and study, and one of the people that was in that particular one was not named Travis Tipton, but I went ahead and took the liberty to use him instead of that person, and let him survive the ordeal and go through the story. as it is. But that's where that sort of came from. I chose the Northern Indiana unit of the Indiana 12th Infantry because that was, by and large, the company that was from the county in which we live in, and numerous people who still have descendants were in that particular division.
So you get this idea of writing this book for like you said, young boys. It's like a little bit of a way of getting them into history in the first place, Civil War history, which is important to the US, of course. But so when you first get this idea, how do you go about, writing the book in the first place, and obviously finding a publisher, and because it's not easy, is it?
No, it's not. And to be honest with you, it was my first attempt at writing a book and having it published. I mean, I've written some other books, but never taken the plunge to actually go through having it published before. But first step was to finish the book, and I had some ideas. The other thing that I really enjoyed was that I was still teaching at the time, and I was using my book as a template for others to write a book as well. And so, we just sat down and brainstormed ideas, and I used some of the things that they were learning about in their language arts classes, and in terms of how to go about doing some creative writing. So it wasn't just me writing a book for the kids. They were learning about how to write a book along with me. And so they came up with some pretty good ideas, and then we're writing books as well. But the story that I chose, I began to read to my students, and before I ever had it published. And I probably, the last 3 or 4 years before I had it published, read to my students, and they really seemed to enjoy it and wanted more. So when I retired, I thought this is the perfect time to actually go through the process of having it published. And I eventually chose a Mascot Publishing Company out of Virginia, and they were able to publish it for me, and went through the whole editing process. And certainly it's been a great experience to go through this.
Yeah, so obviously seeing their reaction to you telling them that story is what spurred you on to want to obviously get this published and get it out to a bigger amount of people, which is fantastic. What I would love to know is what was it like that day that that this parcel turned up and you got to see a book in person and smell it, touch it, and see your name on the front cover for the first time, Trevor?
That's pretty exciting, I must admit. I was doing some substitute teaching at the time, and when it came in, I went ahead and brought it in to show the kids at school, and they were just equally as excited as I was. But to actually see it in print, and with a nice cover on it, and but I think that the thing that really meant the most to me was then when I started finding it in some of our libraries. And that was sort of my goal all along, was to get it into some school libraries, because I just feel that there's not enough good reading material, especially novels that are history related, in our school libraries for students that age. And so, even though I say it's geared towards the 6th grade through 12th grade market, I've had numerous reviews from adults that have enjoyed it just as well. And it just has a neat, I feel, a neat story behind it. And then, of course, the way it turns out at the end is also pretty remarkable as well.
Mm-hmm. And again, the inspiration behind the name is because of that canteen, is it?
The canteen, yeah. Yes. That was the inspiration. That was the reason I called it the Canteen, because as you'll find out if you've not read it, the Canteen saved his life. And I'll go this far as saying that the battle that he was in, the surprise attack, his division suffered. He was shot, and the Canteen was able to deflect the bullet in such a way that it didn't kill him. Whereas the others ended up dying. And so he was the only one that actually survived that massacre. And that's I died of title, The Canteen.
hmm And going back to what you're saying about reading to your students, do you think there is sort of a is Civil War history taught as much in schools now in the US as it used to be?
Not as much. I'll be honest with you. You know, over the 40 years of teaching that I had, it just we're becoming a an educational system that is really emphasizing reading and writing, but unfortunately, we're not doing a lot on creative writing and getting kids out there to write about things that are maybe historically interesting to them, and we just don't spend the time with the history anymore. That's what it really gets down to. And I've always been a history buff, I guess, and one of the other areas that I'm really interested in are the Native Americans. In fact, that's what my next book is going to be about, talking about the Native Americans that lived here long before the expansion of the European continents coming over here. And, so, yeah, I think that you're right. The interest, the amount of time spent on teaching things like the Civil War has depreciated and diminished quite a bit.
Okay, and it's great that you're filling that hole, I suppose you could explain it that way. Um, but yeah, so and also, through this, hopefully we'll get some younger uh, people interested in not just the Civil War but history in general. Which is great. And I think it's fantastic. So I applaud you for what you've done there. But you sort of answered the next question for me because I was going to ask you what was next for Trevor. So you've had this great success with this fantastic little book. So again, that's the plan going forward is a Native American sort of history, is it?
Yes. Like I said, I'm going to tell you the background to it. The next book that I have is there is something that took place back in the 1700s when the Native Americans were being defeated and being annihilated and killed off and driven out of their home country. And that is that they started to steal and kidnap the children from the pioneers that were coming out here. And so one day I was talking to a group about the Native Americans, and I have quite a display of their artifacts. And as I was showing the artifacts, this little old lady came up to me afterwards and said, "I have something I want you to see." And what it was a slate tablet that had been engraved by a stone or a sharp object. And it basically told the story of one of these white captives. And it said that I was taken by the Indians and I was treated very hard and I was brought here and I came here by the way of the big waters, which in my mind is the Great Lakes. But then, I was holding a stone tablet that somebody had scribbled this story on, and they had dated it 1760. And I was always fascinated with that stone. And so again, taking my historical liberties, and I'm going to have created a story about the person who that was, and the trials and tribulations that those kids had to endure when they were kidnapped, and then they were turned into really Native Americans themselves, because that was the purpose behind it, was because their population was dwindling, and the quickest way to replenish that they could gather up as children and bring them into their tribe. So that's my next story, and I think it'll be hopefully as good and exciting to the kids as what the canteen has been.
Yeah, excellent. And I think Native American history has been sort of like forgotten about, actually. So I think having something new would be a fantastic addition. Yeah, so that's great. Anything that I might have forgot to ask you that you would like to say before we finish up here, Trevor?
No, Darren, it's been very interesting process to go through this, and I've just been very pleased with the uh, reception that I've received from it, in our community. And now that it's online with Amazon and Barnes and Noble and some of their outlets, people can get it online. And I've been very pleased with the success of it. And hopefully I can get book number 2 out here before too long.
Yeah. So again, I was going to ask you where it was available, but yeah, you can get it on Amazon, can't you? But is it available other places as well?
Yes, there are several venues out there, but Amazon's probably the one that I'm having the most hits on right now.
Awesome. And have you noticed any sales over here in the UK or not?
I'm sorry.
Have you noticed any sales over in
Oh,
the UK?
I haven't seen that yet. I don't get the uh, printout until the end of the quarter cycle, and the ones that I had received the last quarter were just local. But I do know this, that it's supposed to be heading that way into the UK and become available over there. So I hope so.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, so anyway, Trevor, thank you very much for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate your time, and all that is left to say is thank you.
Well, thank you, Darren. It's really been my pleasure. Nice to have met you and your audience.
And all that is left to say is cheers.
Cheers. Okay. Thank you.